I just wanted to start, I actually have some notes. I had no idea we'd have a crowd like this. And I taught for decades. And this show represents a departure for me because I'll be very blunt. 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, I had my cataracts done. And I'm also a woodworker and a ceramic artist. Someone pointed out to me earlier, a student of mine, she said, I looked at a pot that I did of yours in your class and it said 1990. I said, thanks a lot. I mean, I go back, okay? So, and I taught everything.
1890 or
yeah, no, it was 1790, the French Revolution, all right? So it's great to have you all here, I'm telling you. And it's really a pleasure being back. And she's done a remarkable job, as usual, with the show in the other room and this show here. So back to cataracts, I'll make this quick. So the doctor said, Rich, I want to warn you. This was in Santa Fe. He said, most artists who have the cataracts done, they go and they look at their art and they hate it. And I said, oh, great. I said, I have shows coming up. What am I going to do? And I was saying darker, you know, and I would say dark, but less colorful. This is more, if you know art history, the fog, who were into bright colors, right? That was a movement early 20th century. And it was a big shock to me when I looked at my paints. I thought, boy, these are yummy colors that I'm not used to, the teal, okay, and the yellows and the oranges. This is not me. Plus I thought, all right, I'm gonna change. I don't like to stick with one style so much. You'll see basically the style the Impressionist kind of leaves over there. When I paint these, I go to abstraction. I have a tendency that they kind of drive me crazy. And if you saw that Gazette article, I'm really not insane. I was taken out of context. I didn't mean it that way. I'll never live that down. So this is departure, and I think it's, is it medical? I think, I started seeing color in a whole different way. And it's really amazing that would change the way I looked at things. The title is obviously Shifting Perspective, and by that I mean, when you look at this work, you look at it, and I hope that, as Gerhard Richter, the great artist, German artist, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's the man who did squeegees. Are you familiar with that? Yes. Big canvases, and in the 80s, he took a squeegee, and he put a bunch of paint down, and he just went like this, okay? Now he's probably one of the #1 painters at 89 or 87 in the world. His pieces command $30 million, $110 million, okay? So he said every painting should have a measure of complexity and what was the other word? Complexity, and I can't pronounce the word, but in other words, it should have a measure of mystery and perplexity. And that you should be intrigued, and it should put you off balance a little bit. Does that make sense? And if you look at it, it's not so much looking at it the first time, but it's the experience. You come back and you look at it again and again, right? Some of these, I'll be very honest, I put in my dining room, take it out of my studio, which unfortunately is in a garage. So I'm next to a car sometimes, and fumes. And I put it in the dining room because of a light that I have. And I'll look at it, I'll think, okay, I hate the piece, it's boring, or it's trite. And then I go back and I maybe take it out, and a lot of these paintings have 4 or 5 paintings underneath. I don't pump them out, okay? I used to think I could do, painting a week. Maybe it's the age thing, or now I'm more, what's the term? More particular. And I was an abstract expressionist for years. I taught every level of art. I went to Chicago Art Institute when I was 15 on a special scholarship student for credit in Chicago. It wasn't a big deal to me because his art institute was about 30 minutes away from the south side where I live. So that had a big influence on me. I was very trained. I've been trying to break the training. Does that make sense? You know, and I taught Luann knows, I taught every level of art. And clay, raku, woodworking, sculpture, design, everything imagined to all ages. And the thing I learned now is Picasso said something in his later years. He said this, and it's something for younger art. I'm trying to rid myself, exercise myself of all those teachings and to paint like a child, but with the skill of an adult. Does that make sense? So I guess I'm trying to do the same thing. I don't want to be a child painter. I don't want to copy what kids do. But there's something so great about not staying in the lines, you know what I mean? And just being free and floating. But on the other end, I don't want to just throw scribbles and markings all over, which is a big deal. That was in the 80s and 70s. I got into that. I do a line here, and it's great. It's so fun. I think that's great. You know, that has its own merits, you know, but after a while, I had to move on. So what you're seeing in these works, you're seeing, I love this piece because this is a transitional piece for me, and so is that one, is that I've incorporated more formalistic, in other words, more filled in areas that are formal shapes. Do you see what I'm getting at? That are painterly and solid. All of a sudden then, I stole from Gerhard Richter, and I pull a little bit of that squeegee in here with a spackler thing, not a brush. Okay, so someone asked me, I'll be brief, well, how do you paint? Well, I do draw occasionally, but I did a whole bunch of cars, photos of cars in San Luis, Colorado, in the junkyard about 20 years ago. And this is a car detail. So look at this, isn't this terrible? This is what I paint big paintings from. Why my eyes are so bad. Well, you can ignore the drawing, that's wine. Part of my vodka series that I don't drink. I'm serious, I'm being honest. And then this one has been chewed up. Maybe it's my cat. I'll take composite. I know, it's sad, isn't it? It's very sad. I'll take magazines. I'll take old paintings, okay? I'll steal a piece from another artist, print it out, and take a little corner. I don't want to copy, you know, the work. But then I labor, and I'll show you the printouts. Just send these down. So here's that same picture printed. But does it change? Yeah, you can see I have a lot of fragmentation, a lot of colors, and that in itself is a challenge. These are just photographs and wall things from Ladies Magazine. Here's that car. Can you see the automobile? Yeah. Now I'll be very honest. See this painting here? You know, you're not supposed to tell your secrets. But since I taught for years, I really believe education is free, knowledge is free. And this is that painting. Hard to believe, isn't it? I saved some of this up there, but then I changed the color. See what I mean? All right, elongate it. And then here's another one. So you'll get an idea how I work. And then I'll tear these off. If something doesn't work, I'll say, oh, Rich, what the hell? You know, pull that. That's too much color. Usually what ends up is the montage that it drove me crazy. That's 4 paintings underneath. And I kept changing and changing. And that one took me about 5 weeks. I'm not as fast as I used to be. Okay, so I'm not going to belabor these. They all have different names. I have trouble with names. I would rather, she knows, I would rather call composition 1, composition 2. You know? But I don't know, I'm going to leave it open to questions, and you can ask me about, you know, anything it does with art. You're a little kid, and you had clouds, houses loading up here at 3. Then guess what happens at 11 and 12? What happens? Especially boys, not so much girls. They're making little tiny drawings of cars in detail. They're in the system. Does that make sense? They've been programmed and patterned. So it's taken me, I was trained classically, I could copy anything at 19. Rembrandt, and in fact, the gallery owner, I have a show October, Canyon Road at my gallery there. And he said, Rich, you could have been a great forger, you would have made a lot of money. I told him, it's true, I have Charlie Russell paintings that are originals, but I have to put a